Happening now, after 3 decades on Florida's death row, Donald Dilbeck will be put to death by lethal injection at any moment. Dilbeck has been on death row since the 1990 killing of Fay van in the parking lot of the Tallahassee Mall. Our Katie Kaplan is live just outside Stark with more on how he arrived.
Charged of murder in the first degree.
It has taken more than 30 years for Donald Dilbeck to meet his punishment.
A majority of the jury, by a vote of 8-4,
With what he characterized as an orange shirt, just watch him, leaning against one of the pillars about halfway down, wearing sunglasses.
After the deadly attack, Dilbeck was chased by a security guard, who he also tried to stab before being captured a short time. Dilbeck later confessing to the crime in court, saying he stabbed Fay van when she started fighting back.
She screamed, and then I go up to grab her, get my hair out of her hand, and she wound up biting me. And I just go off.
Dilbeck hoping the confession would save him from the death penalty.
At just 15 years old, Donald David Dilbeck committed a crime that shocked Florida. He shot and killed a sheriff's deputy using the officer's own weapon. The courtroom didn't flinch. Life without parole, the judge declared. Case closed. The public believed justice had been served, but the system faltered. Just 4 years into his sentence, Dilbeck escaped prison. He was caught. Years later, he escaped again. And this time, it ended in blood. On June 24, 1990, 44-year-old Robbie Fay was sitting in her car on a hot summer afternoon in a crowded Tallahassee Mall parking lot. She was running errands, living her life, unaware that Dilbeck was watching. He had stolen a knife and was desperate to flee the city. He tried to hijack her car. She resisted. He stabbed her repeatedly until she collapsed, bleeding out in her seat. The car rolled forward and crashed. Her life ended within hours. Police tackled Dilbeck in someone's backyard, the knife still in his hand. Across Florida, outrage exploded. How could a convicted cop killer serving life be allowed the chance to kill again? The Florida Department of Corrections was thrust into the spotlight. Not just for a brutal murder, but for a monumental failure to protect, a failure to contain, a failure of the very system meant to ensure public safety. For decades, Dilbeck sat on death row, silent and largely forgotten until 2023, when his name resurfaced. His execution was scheduled, and his final 24 hours began. But when he spoke for the last time, it wasn't with regret. It was with rage. A defiant, bitter attack aimed at Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. No apology, no remorse, just fury. It was a final act of rebellion from a man whose life had been defined by violence, escape, and resistance to authority. Was he a damaged child abandoned by society, or a dangerous manipulator who used his past to justify destruction? This is the unsettling story of Donald David Dilbeck, his early years, his violent crimes, the lives he shattered, and the final day he spent awaiting death. It's a story Florida will not forget. If this case makes you question the justice system, when it works, when it fails, and who pays the price, don't look away. Like this video to help it reach more viewers. Subscribe for deeper true crime investigations, and drop a comment below. Let's talk about the system, the victims, and what Dilbeck's final words really mean. It all began on a quiet spring night in 1979. Dilbeck, just a teenager, sat in a stolen Cadillac parked near Fort Myers Beach. The engine was off, the park was closed, and he was alone, dirty, exhausted, and hollow-eyed after days on the run. He had no one waiting for him, no home, no future. Lay a pistol under the seat and a deep reservoir of rage built over years of pain. A call came in to local deputies. Suspicious vehicle, lone occupant. Deputy Dwight Lynn Hall, 31 years old, answered. It was routine. Hall approached the car calmly, professionally, but Dilbeck bolted. The deputy chased him through the dark. Moments later, a struggle erupted. In the chaos, Dilbeck wrestled away Hall's service weapon and fired. 2 gunshots echoed across the sand. Deputy Hall fell, fatally wounded. Not long after, Dilbeck was caught a child charged with killing a lawman. The tragedy was sealed. When Donald David Dilbeck was just 6 years old, his father walked out and never looked back. His mother, struggling with alcoholism, soon followed in every way but physically, emotionally abandoned. Donald became a child no one wanted to claim. a name shuffled from one foster home to the next, like a file no one wanted to open. He wasn't raised so much as he was handled, passed around, ignored. By the time he was 15, he'd lived in more places than he could count, but never once in a home that felt safe. There was no structure, no guidance, no love, just silence and survival. School didn't stand a chance. He dropped out young, ran away often, scraped by on the streets, through petty theft and car hopping, sleeping wherever there was shelter. Most saw him as trouble, a delinquent destined for ruin, but inside he was a wounded boy, full of rage that no one ever tried to understand. That rage hardened into something colder. He never learned how to process anger only, how to obey it. So when a 15-year-old Dilbeck sat inside a stolen Cadillac on a quiet beach road in Fort Myers, he was already a ghosted teenager, whose pain had calcified into volatility. That April evening in 1979, Deputy Dwight Hall approached what seemed like a routine check. But Dilbeck didn't see a police officer. He saw a threat, another man telling him what to do, and that was all it took. In a violent flash, he wrestled Hall's service weapon away and pulled the trigger. 2 shots later, the deputy lay dead in the sand. The boy who had always run had now killed, and prison became the only place that would take him. But even behind bars, Dilbeck couldn't stay still. He escaped once, then again, each time returned, each time angrier. And finally, after another escape in 1990, a woman named Robbie Fay paid the price. She was carjacked and brutally stabbed in a mall parking lot. From that moment on, Dilbeck's fate was sealed. Still, the execution didn't come quickly. For over 30 years, he sat on Florida's death row, watching others walk their final walk while he remained suspended in limbo. He read, he wrote, he argued. Sometimes he was combative, sometimes quiet. Some guards said he had mellowed with time. Others claimed the fury was simply buried deeper. But in early 2023, the silence shattered. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed his death warrant, making Dilbeck the first prisoner in nearly 4 years scheduled for execution. The countdown began. He had just 30 days left. On February 23, 2023, the sun rose over Florida State Prison, casting a dim orange light through the morning fog. Inside the death house, time didn't move in minutes. Sit moved in moments, stretched thin and heavy. Dilbeck had already been moved to the death watch cell, just 15 feet from the execution chamber. There were no distractions now, no cellmate, just a narrow bed, a metal sink, and a window facing a hallway he'd never walk again. The guards were more formal, more distant. There was no need for small talk. Everyone knew how this story ended. Those final days, 2 spiritual advisors visited. He declined a priest. There were no tearful confessions, no desperate prayers. Instead, he asked for silence. He wrote letters, some to family, one to a reporter. But he didn't ask for forgiveness or plead for his life. It seemed he had come to terms with the ending, shaping his own narrative as best he could, even if it was one stained by irreversible choices. When the warden asked what he wanted for his final meal, Dilbeck answered without hesitation. Fried shrimp, mushrooms, onion rings. Butter pecan ice cream, pecan pie, and a large chocolate shake. Not a grand feast more, like comfort food. A child's favorites reaching back to a simpler time, perhaps one that never truly existed. On the morning of his execution, the prison went into full lockdown. No movement, no noise. Extra guards were posted. 4:30 p.m., the final ritual began when execution day arrived. Donald Dilbeck was offered the opportunity to take one last shower. He declined. At 5 p.m., he changed into a clean, pressed uniform, no shackles, no cuffs, just 2 guards at his side as they walked him slowly down the sterile corridor toward Florida's death chamber. He didn't resist, he didn't look back. By 6 p.m., the small witness room was filled. On one side sat members of Robbie Fay's grieving family. On the other, reporters with notepads in hand, ready to document the end of a long and violent chapter. The lights were bright, the air cold and clinical. Inside the glass, the gurney stood still, silent, waiting. At exactly 6:06 p.m., Donald David Dilbeck was strapped down, arms extended outward, 4 lines inserted into both arms. He turned his head toward the window, locking eyes with those watching his final moments. What came next shocked nearly everyone in the room. in a calm but defiant voice. Dilbeck delivered one of the most controversial final statements Florida's death chamber had ever witnessed. He acknowledged his past. "I know I hurt people when I was young. I really messed up." But then, his words pivoted, not toward remorse, but toward condemnation. He lashed out at Governor Ron DeSantis, claiming the governor had caused far more harm to people across the state. He said he spoke on behalf of men, women, and children who had suffered under leadership like DeSantis's. The room froze in stunned silence. No one expected a political tirade in the final seconds of a man's life. At 6:13 p.m., Donald Dilbeck was pronounced dead. He was 59 years old. Lethal chemicals coursed through his veins, and without struggle or tears, his life quietly ended on that cold steel table. But truthfully, his story didn't end there. It had been ending for years, decades, even long before the executioner prepared the syringes. From the moment his father left, from the years spent past between broken foster homes, his life had been unraveling. No structure, no guidance. No intervention when it might have changed his path. But none of that, not the neglect, not the abandonment, could ever justify what he became. By the age of 15, Dilbeck had already killed a law enforcement officer. Years later, after escaping custody, he claimed the life of an innocent woman simply sitting in her car. No, 2 families left shattered. Deputy Dwight Hall never returned home that night. Robbie Fay never finished her errands. Their loved ones have lived with an ache that no courtroom verdict, or execution could heal. For 32 long years, Dilbeck sat on death row, watching seasons change through concrete and steel. When the state finally called his number, there was no dramatic rescue, no twist of fate, only the slow hum of fluorescent lights and the quiet gravity of a gurney waiting to finish what began decades ago. He may have wanted his final words to spark something. Anger, awareness, defiance, but when the drugs stopped his heart, they didn't echo. They faded. Just like him, another file closed. Another name in the death row ledger. And so, the cycle ended, not with fireworks, but with silence.